I am. Alright, just gonna jump right into this. Haven't really ordered my thoughts too much with this, although perhaps I should have, because this is probably going to be one of the more challenging things to bridge or explain. But I want to call this video The Perspective of a Tree. And okay, so as always, where to begin? Well, that's a good point. Where to begin? Everything's a circle. So from the point of view of a tree, okay, yeah, where to begin? So you may have heard the idea that humans are like walking trees. So I guess we can kind of start there. The difference between a walking tree and a not walking tree. A tree, okay, so a walking tree, if you come up to a walking tree or a human and you poke it or you give it some sort of stimulus, some sort of basically, to a person, you'll have a lot more maybe leverage to be able to move them based on something smaller. Like if you go up and you poke a tree, it's not usually gonna get up and move. Even if you take an axe to it, it's generally not gonna just slap you. It's generally not gonna try to run away from you. And so why? Trees are known to be wise, and they are oftentimes very old and obviously very connected. And that's really the key here, is that they are very connected. They have roots. So I've had some experiences, one in particular while I've been in Costa Rica, up in the rainforest, of just being deep in the forest and just kind of losing myself, losing my identity with this person. And perhaps it could be valuable to try to transmit some of the maybe some of the insights that can be gathered by immersing yourself in that sort of environment. Again, challenging to explain. The first thing that's important to try to grasp is this whole time thing. A tree will react to certain things. Like if you pour some sort of poison on the tree, for example, like if you pour poison all the way around the base of the tree, depending on, the size of the tree, etc., and other factors, over the course of maybe a day or 2 days or 3 days or a week, you'll start to see a reaction from the tree. But its reaction time is the paradox, because you would think that a higher reaction time corresponds to a higher frequency, and that's true. It's very hard to explain. When you're perceiving your surroundings and you're perceiving your environment from the point of view of a tree, you're not seeing individual objects. You are, but you're not. You're seeing, so for example, if you were a tree and you were and a tree's going to be there for 100 years, maybe 500 years, a long time, much longer than a human is going to stay in one spot. And so when a tree is looking at something, it's been looking at that same spot because it never moves for the whole time that it's been there. And so it's not actually seeing what's there. Like when you're looking at something, you're seeing what's there right now based on your frequency, but the tree's not operating on that frequency. The tree's operating on a higher frequency. So it's seeing through time. So when it looks at something, it's seeing what it used to be what it is and what it's going to be. It's seeing a complete loop. So it would be looking at something and it would see something like what the sum or what the total, I guess, of what has happened in that space over the course of that tree's whole life. But even then it gets, again, very challenging to explain, because you're like, it's easy to explain things that are fragmented because you just try to put it in a box, but the whole nature of the tree's perspective is it's not in a box, and so it can be, you know, challenging. So the tree is looking at the sum total of its environment. It's not really looking at individual moments. Like, it's always in the present. So the present is everything at once. And you've heard that before, but if you haven't had that experience, then it can be challenging to relate. So there's a couple points. I really don't want to make this a long video. I'm kind of making it longer than it needs to be already. I lost my train of thought. When the tree is having its experience, like when it lives and when it dies, it's not identified as the tree. The tree is a body. The tree is an instrument. It maybe like a, I don't know if the right word is a hub. It's something that it takes in information and it broadcasts information. It takes in information and it broadcasts information. It's a point of concentration. It's like a tower. It's like a means for, so each individual tree that makes up the forest, each individual tree would be a means of the forest communicating with itself. So the tree then, or the forest then, or anything that's really connected to nature is a means of the earth communicating with itself. And so you hear this man or the mission. Humans generally have a more egoic or a more fragmented perspective, and so they're really dealing with the man, like it's all about me, 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 me. And this is a very cancerous way of expressing yourself. The mission is more like the bigger picture, like looking at your set of looking at your sum, like what makes you who you are in your perspective, and then relating that to your environment so that you can define how you can be of the greatest service. Like, how can you serve yourself the best? And yourself is not the body. The self is whatever you're connected to, and so on and so forth in a fractal way. So the tree then, okay, this is another part that's one of the other points that I wanted to make in this video, and it has a lot to do with life and death. When you cut down the tree, like let's say you cut down the tree and the tree dies, whatever that tree was doesn't die. Like, okay, in the experience of what it is to be a tree, okay, if you've ever been on like some sort of drug that makes you high, something negative could be going on at the same time, but somehow it doesn't affect you as much. Like, somehow it's not as relevant to who you are. Like, somehow it's like almost like you're above it, like you're high, right? And humans, they have this tendency to constantly want to chase this high because they're doing something like this, which I'm not saying is good or bad, but the tree is naturally high because the tree is not moving back and forth. The tree is always at its center, and so the center is bliss, and so the tree is always in bliss. And because it's always in bliss, it's never being forced. It's never being forced to divide itself it's never being, it's never losing sight of the big picture. That's really the point. The tree's never losing sight of the big picture. And so when you, if let's say if you cut down the tree doesn't die. Effectively, the earth in that particular space may be less capable of communicating with itself, perhaps. But whatever the entity, if there was one, that would identify itself as that tree continues on. And this is the kind of an attempt at trying to convey what happens when you die. When the tree dies, it's like, I'm trying to explain this. It's like I can see it, but I'm trying to bring it into right here. It's like these, when the tree goes, it's like if you could imagine, like the tree looks like it's connected to stuff. Like when you look at the tree, it's like the branches, it looks like it's connected to the air. It's like when you look at the tree, it's connected to the ground and all the things in the ground. But when it's on the other side, when it's in the light, it looks like it's not connected to anything. But obviously, that's not true. It's connected to everything. It's constantly receiving all of this information, and it's transmitting information. So all of the other beings that maybe don't have those roots, like animals and things like that, they'll get their information from the trees. The trees will be constantly broadcasting this signal like a Wi-Fi tower. Like instead of having these big cell phone towers, you'll have a tree, and the tree will be giving this information because it's constantly it's streaming this information from the earth, and the earth is communicating. So what the trees are probably going to be telling you at this point, if they're organic, connected to the earth, is basically from the point of view of the earth. And so this is the mission. So this whole video kind of ties into like, what is the mission? Like, what should you be doing right now? And that maybe that's a different video, and maybe it's part of my other videos, I don't know. But this is to help you recognize how you can become like the tree. If you just become still, and there's a lot to this, and yeah, that's why these videos there. Yeah, because it can just go on forever. So sometimes, you know, it can be just as hard to start making these videos as it can be to end making these videos. And so sometimes I'm always dancing with myself when it comes to making these. If when the tree experiences death, it's just merging with the rest of its environment. It's still connected to the rest of its environment, so it's not actually dying. It's always been connected to its environment. But if it's experiencing life as a tree, it's just as good of a experience as anywhere else. Everywhere is everything. And saying this sounds kind of, you know, cliche or whatever, but it's the truth, obviously, from the point of view of the tree, or else it would probably be walking around doing other stuff, but it's not. And it seems to be, you know, when it's not being meddled with by some sort of entity that doesn't know who it is one of the most successful forms of life. It's been here since the beginning. It's not like the trees are going extinct. It's not like the trees are endangered. The trees are numerous, and so there's a reason for that. And so to try to understand what it's like to be a tree could be very enlightening. 14 minutes. Again, I'm gonna have to go back and watch it and just, you know, I say like I should just like make these little bullet points, but I don't know. Sometimes I don't like doing that, just because I would like it to flow. But then sometimes it has the effect of having the video where it's kind of like, maybe it's kind of all over the place, and then, but I would, kind of the point of the video is to kind of connect the dots for people. But if I'm just kind of giving dots, and then people kind of got to connect it for themselves, and then so that's another battle. Yeah. So yeah, so the main point here is recognizing your connection to the tree and how naturally you should be very similar to the tree, but how this false artificial your artificial parents, this technological construct has disconnected you from your roots, from where you come from. And so The only way for you to feel connected is with some Wi-Fi or with whatever, but it's not. The trees are always communicating. And here's a key to all this. Your environment, you can communicate with your environment. It's like you can pierce your environment, like to see what is truly in front of you. Like if you were to look at a tree, most people, they just be like, it's a tree. But like to try to like get to know the tree as like a person, like you can look at a human and be like, it's a human. But the human has a whole story and a whole experience and a whole, it has ancestors and it has a purpose and it has everything. And the trees know a little bit more about that than probably most humans do, because they still have their connection to where they come from. So to learn to communicate with those beings can be a powerful thing. So the key to that is your ability to pierce into, because everything is sexual, your ability to pierce into a tree in the same way as your ability to pierce into another person is, it's like generally you're only going to be able to get, it's like a give and a take relationship. You're only going to be able to get so far unless you're being manipulative, etc., etc. It doesn't really work that way so much with trees. Your ability to pierce into that entity, your ability to share with that entity is exactly that, to be able to share. And if you haven't pierced that far into yourself, then that's about how far that tree will be able to pierce into you. And if that's not very far, if you're not deep, if you're dealing with a lot of surface, like the surface of your consciousness, you're not willing to dive into yourself and deal with those, with your roots, with your darkness, then the tree's not going to show you its darkness. Everything has darkness. Everything has what you might consider to be flaws. Not really flaws, but it's like the reason why you haven't looked inside yourself is because of the judgment. And so if the tree were to show you who it was, there would also be that judgment. And the tree just it doesn't need you to cast that darkness. It's like, it's kind of hard to explain, but hopefully it makes sense. So your ability to pierce into your environment is your ability to pierce into yourself. That should be simple. Probably should know that by now. But in relation specifically to the tree, I have a story, but I don't know if it... Long story short, I had an experience where I was sitting in the forest, and this was back when I was in the States, and I was in the Georgia mountains, and I was looking at these trees, and again, kind of just kind of like merging with my environment. One of those experiences, and just I saw like this family of trees. Like I didn't know it was a family of trees until I started to look at it, and I started to see like it was. I could see the whole family. I could see, like, I don't want to call them the mother and the father, but they were like the elder trees and then the younger trees, and the younger trees, they kind of had like a different type of personality than the older trees did. And I recognized though that they wanted to share. It's like people want to connect. Trees want to connect. That's their whole thing. But not if it's going to cause them more harm than good. Like not if they're not going to get something out of the deal. Like if you're just going to be draining their energy. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to have something to give. Like if you want to see what makes them valuable, you have to see the value in yourself. And so, yeah. Yeah. Hopefully this hasn't been too yeah. So yeah. If you're connected to your environment, when you die, you don't actually die. Your concentration may disperse a little bit into the larger concentration, or if you can maintain your focus, if you can maintain your will, if you can maintain your purpose, like if from your point of view your purpose extends beyond your physical body, then you would be able to maintain your consciousness and your memories past death. And so this has a lot to do with probably a whole nother video, but a lot to do with your dreams and your ability to stay conscious in your dreams and stay conscious in your waking life, because really what's the difference? How do you know you're not in a dream right now? And the trees are really your guides. They are really just like how you would get on, like your guide would be like the news on your iPhone. You get up, hook up to the internet, and you see what's going on in the world. Trees know, because obviously the trees are connected to the whole world and they feel everything. And so, and it's like maybe one tree can't feel every angle of wind, every gust, every temperature change, but the forest can. And this forest connected to this forest, and they're all constantly communicating with each other because they're all in sync. They're all synchronized together. They're in harmony. They are in an alliance. But if you set yourself against them in some way by contributing to that which destroys them, then of course they would probably not be too willing to commune with you. And so this same thing applies to all of nature, all of aspects of yourself. And so you can be big in this, you can be small. I'm not saying one is big or one is better than the other, but you kind of get the idea. You can be fragmented or you can become whole. And if you're whole, then of course you can always talk to yourself. Of course you can communicate with yourself across time and space, etc., etc. But there's a practical application and a practical mechanism to do that. And obviously the technology is a plagiarization of what nature already did. So in that sense, it becomes a little more simple to explain with those type of reference points. I'm gonna watch this video, and yeah, hopefully it's you know, coherent enough to be of some service. Yeah, so have a great day.